Thank you, everyone, for being with us today. This is Mark Morris with Word of Faith Fellowship, and we're so glad that you are listening. Today, I have a dear friend of mine with me. His name is Joe English, and he's been a member of the Word of Faith Fellowship since 1990. He came the same year I did. And Joe is going to share with you an amazing testimony about his life. Joe had a life previously of fame, of fortune. He was a musician and played with very famous people, had lots of money. But one thing that he did not have was Jesus Christ. And he's going to share with you how when he had everything that people could think you would want in the world, his life was being destroyed and he was lonely and he was empty. And he's going to share with you about how there came a time when he met Jesus Christ and his life was no longer empty. So, Joe, let's go ahead and hear from you.
Good morning. Hi, Jim. Good morning. Good morning, Rutherford County. On my way over here, I thought about, I am so happy to be pulling up to this radio station and coming into here to tell you my testimony. It's a miracle that I'm here. It's a miracle that I'm alive. And, I've been thinking about what I was going to say. It's like, well, I was born in 1949. Then I have 1949 till the 16th of January 2019. I have that. But I'm going to try. I've been asking, praying, and said, God, please let me say what I need to say so you can hear it and it'll help you. I was born in Rochester, New York. That was July 2nd, 1949. And, Mark, I was thinking about my family. We didn't talk about my upbringing, but it's real dysfunctional. And as a young boy, I seemed to have had some kind of musical talent. I remember the children would get me to stand on a chair and put the records on the little record player, the 45s, and I would sing, and they would stand around me and they would clap, and then it's kind of funny when I think back. And there was a point early on that I developed a tumor in my ankle, and I ended up almost losing my ankle. I had 2 major surgeries and ended up wearing a brace. And, as a young person, it was pretty devastating because I was real good at Little League, and basically it just stopped everything. And the sad part of it is a lot of the people that I was around, the children that I was around, they made fun of me. They called me crippled. And that developed, looking back, that really developed a bitterness on the inside of me, and I became the class clown because I couldn't perform and do things that I used to do. So I just became a class clown. And I developed a very sarcastic mouth that just put people down. But the problem was I was so wounded on the inside. It's the only way I knew to escape, And around, I don't know what year it was, but my parents bought me a drum set. And, till this day, my parents have passed away. I should have asked them, why did you do that? I don't know. They bought me a drum set. And during my high school years, we took a test in the school. It was called a Seashore test, and it was a musical ability test. And the city I lived in was 700,000, a lot of people. And I scored, I think, in the top 10. And I got a free scholarship to a school that was part of the Eastman School of Music, which is a real prestigious school in Rochester. And I went for 2 lessons, and even at an early age, I thought, I'm not going to do this, because I didn't like anybody telling me what to do. and I wanted to do it my way, and that's the story of my life. And so I quit that, and I ended up with little house garage bands, playing in bands, and then ended up in around 1970 was in a band. We started a band. We ended up recording an album with Epic Records, which the older people will know that, and it was a big record deal. And we never became famous, but we toured all over the country. Now this 1970. You can do the math. I was very young, and we toured and opened for major acts around the country. We played the Fillmore East and the Fillmore West and Whiskey A Go Go, all the main places that you had to be to become famous. And but that band, we ended up moving out of Syracuse, New York, and we moved to Florida, Daytona Beach. And that's where, well, we were in Daytona Beach for a little bit. Then we ended up moving to Macon, Georgia. And Macon, Georgia at that time was a hub for the Southern rock music. There was the Allman Brothers. There was a whole bunch of groups around then. And we ended up moving there. And that's where I met, I look at my little years. That was, that's where I met my wife. That's where I met Dale. And while I was playing, you can help me, Mark, if I'm... You have to understand when you do these kind of interviews, you have to go, you think about what you did in your whole life, and you try to put it in a half an hour. But so I'm in Macon. While I was in Macon, we used to play a club, and a lot of famous musicians and different people would come in and they would hear us. And there was a fellow that came in who was working with Paul McCartney. His name was Tony Dorsey. And he used to listen to me play. And Tony Dorsey was working with Paul McCartney as his horn arranger. And Paul, I guess, decided he wanted to switch drummers. And he asked Tony, "Do you know anybody?" And Tony said, "I got the guy for you." So I get a phone call. "We want you to come to New Orleans." And in New Orleans, we did the Venus and Mars album. And I didn't know anything. I came in there, didn't know any of the songs, didn't know anything. And I looked at my friend Tony. I said, "Tony, I don't know any of this material." He goes, "Don't worry." He goes, "I'll be out there. You watch me. I'll tell you when to start, when to stop." And all the rest is history. It was no audition. And Paul and I, we hit it off. And it's all history. And I joined the band, and shortly after that I went over to England to mix that album. And I did 4 albums with Wings, did the world tour. I want to go back. At an early age, I started smoking marijuana. Then I took LSD. And then as the years progressed, the drugs got worse. And while I was with Wings, I was living in England, and I was introduced to heroin. And there were a few times that I overdosed. I was by myself in my apartment. And like I said, when I woke up this morning and I came here, I said, "This is a miracle." What I wanted to say, and I didn't say, I'd say, Rutherford County, if there's anybody listening and you're fighting, whatever you're fighting, I'm going to tell you, if you're watching this and you're hearing me, believe me, there is a God who's a deliverer and can restore your life. Because without God, I would not be here. So I'm living in England. I had I had money. I go back to the little guy who said, "I'll show you," when they would make fun of me when I was wearing that brace. I had my little drum set and all that stuff I had. "I'll show you one day." Then all of a sudden I turned around and it was that one day. And here I was touring the world in the #1 band for 3-4 years. And it was lonely. I would spend time in my flat in London. I had a Porsche, I had a Jeep, I had a Blazer, we had a four-wheel drive truck, I had 200 acres of land. I mean, all the things that you would think would make somebody very, very happy. You know, on the outside, you look happy, but on the inside, I spent many a days in England just lonely. And it got to a point where I was every 2 weeks, I'd fly home. I'd fly home to Atlanta, outside Atlanta, and because just wanted to go home, see Dale, and so having things. I tell young people today, you know, because you have aspirations and you have dreams and you have thoughts that you want to do this and you want to do that. And let me tell you, time goes by real quick. I'm 69 years old. I'm talking about 1970s, and I'm talking about 80s. And time goes by so quick. And God has a plan. He's got a plan for your life. And to get in God's plan early and to spend your life in the peace of God and the love of God and helping people and having a wonderful relationship with your wife, having friends who care for you, there's nothing else. I mean, there is nothing else. It's like I told somebody, it's like you carry around this suitcase, this bag, and you're filling it with things all your life that you think are going to make you happy. You just keep filling it. And then you fill it some more. And you fill it some more. And then all of a sudden you realize all this time has gone by. And then when you find Jesus and you find that peace, you go, well, all the time I wasted when I could have been like this, happy. But, you know, God is a forgiving God, and I can't tell you, you hear about, well, God is merciful. Let me tell you, God is merciful. Since, you know, I'm trying to keep up with the years here.
And you were sharing about, you know, heroin. You got on heroin. You were going back and forth between London and coming here and seeing your wife here. I believe you shared how you had land here in Georgia, and then you were in London recording. And so you mentioned the heroin and that you almost overdosed. So what eventually happened with your time at Wings?
Yeah, it came down to, we were doing an album. It was called London Town, and it came to a point where I told Paul and Linda, I said, I want to talk to you. So we had a little meeting in the office in London, and I told them, I said, I need to go. I need to go home. I need to leave and go home. And they were surprised, and they said, what can we do? Is there anything we can do? We can get you a house, get you a flat, or because a lot of people don't know, when I came to England, Paul took me into his house with his family. I stayed upstairs in the bedroom because he knew I was a young guy coming over there. And, you know, you don't hear that side of stuff. You usually hear people are superstars and they're this, that, and the other thing. But he had me stay at his house so I could be comfortable and not feel out of place. And so I told them I'm going to leave, and they said, okay. And I basically the next day or the day after, I had packed my stuff and got on a plane and went home, and just left it all behind. And I was desperate. My life was a mess. You know, I could do the music part of it, but to me, there was a major hole and void in my life, and I needed something, and I didn't know what it was. And let me back up a little bit. My wife has been on this program. She gave her testimony, and during the London Town album. She was involved in a bad car accident, and she was almost killed in the accident. Spent a month in the hospital, and to make a long story short, she ended up. I mean, God healed her leg. I mean, basically, God healed her leg because they went back in and looked, and the bone had grown together, and in her leg, and through all that, she got born again. So I have a wife who's born again, and I have Joe who's just come out of being comes home a mess.
And you're talking about gave her life to Jesus and born again, like it talks about in John 3, and surrendered her life to Jesus.
Oh, she was totally different. I'm not talking about a little bit. Totally. Didn't do anything she used to do in the past. Everything stopped. She was a different person. And I used to go to the people who that used to minister to her, and the lady was so sweet. She sat down and she wanted to help me, and they believed this was back long time ago. What is this, in the 70s? The lady told me they used to they had a deliverance ministry, and I didn't know anything about deliverance, and they listened to this guy called Derek Prince. This is a long time ago. And the lady sat me down, and she goes, "Joe, I really love you, and I want to help you." She goes, "I just, even sitting here looking at you, you're full of devils. You're full of demons." And I didn't take offense at that, because I knew I had something, and there was something that was destroying my life. I knew it. And I'm looking at the clock. Time goes by quick here. And so basically Dale went on with God, and I decided I wanted to do what I wanted to do. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And let's see, what has that got us up to here?
So how did you eventually get to Word of Faith Fellowship? I know you came here the same year as me, 1990.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You're talking about Dale becoming a Christian, and she's trying to help you. So how did you get here? And just a few minutes left here.
Yeah, after I left Wings, I started doing Christian albums. Supposedly Christian albums. I was not a Christian. I was not born again. I was still messed up on drugs. And I did, 4 or 5 albums, 4 with Wings, and then I did 4 of my own albums, 4 or 5 of my own albums. And I was a mess. And like I was working with Ray Nino, who owned the record company, the Christian record company. And in 1990, I was staying at his house, and I needed help. And Ray had come down here. You had heard his testimony. He had come down here, and then he came back, and he told Dale and I, he said, you need to come down. You need to move down here for help. Joe needs help. Come down here.
And at that time, were you still struggling with the drugs?
Oh, yeah.
Having problems?
Yeah.
And Ray shared on this radio program, and he touched on it. He mentioned about you even having being high and doing these Christian concerts.
Oh, yeah. It was. I've done a lot of repenting because it was so bad. It was bad. It wasn't God. I mean, I did my music, and you put your name on it. You put the Christian name on it. You just did world music like the world. Stick Christian lyrics on it. Go out. It's an abomination. And I've done a lot of repenting for that. So in 1990, I moved down here, and I just talked to Brenda, Ray Nino's wife, yesterday, and I told her, I said, I've been thinking, if God hadn't put it on your heart to have me come down here for help, I would not be alive. I would not be alive. I would have overdosed. I would have been dead, found somewhere. And I'm so grateful for them because they loved me and cared for me all these years. True friends. That's real friends. So I came down here and I've had a lot of struggles. I've had ups and downs. I've had people who have laid their life down for me. When I got here, I just wasn't used to people they really cared for me and they really loved me and they really wanted to help me. But let me tell you, still have that. I'm going to do it my way. I don't want to be told what to do. That's self-will. It's your will, Jesus, not my will. And it took me a long time to learn that. I'd be up and I'd backslide. I'd be up and I'd be backslide. And just the mercy was God. The mercy of God was there. And my pastor, Jane Whaley, was always, at times she was firm with me. She said, you can't do this. But at the same time, you could feel the love of God from her. That God was telling her, just hold on, just give him another chance. He's coming. He's coming. And you can see the fruit. I'm sitting here talking to you, and I'll tell you, I have peace. I have a great wife. I have friends. I mean, where else can you be that if it's 2:00 in the morning and I'm having a problem, anything, I could call and somebody will come and help. Or if I go to the hospital and I'm going to have surgery, I got somebody right there. Because if I'm a little scared and I'm getting to a little fear, or, about what's gonna happen, there's somebody there's just going to be okay. Where do you can't find that anywhere. So I keep going back to spending all your life filling that bag up with things you think you want to make you happy. I'll tell you what happiness is. Happiness is going to bed at night and that light goes out and you're laying in bed and you have peace in your heart. You don't have tormenting thoughts. You don't have unrest. You go to sleep and you have sweet sleep. You can't buy that. And all my life I looked for it. I gold records. I mean, anything. If you're a musician, anything you would want, I got. And it for me and my life, it was destruction. Up until the point I just surrendered to Jesus. That's it. No more fighting. No more running. All I want to do is serve you.
That's great, Joe. And we just got maybe a minute or two left. And I know you're going to sing a song, and I wanted if you could just touch on you mentioned you were singing so-called Christian rock music. Ray Nino was who's part of our church, shared earlier, and he has several testimonies that listeners can hear it on our website there. If you go to our website, wordoffaithfellowship.org, it's there. But he was promoting you, and you were sharing how your wife became a Christian, and she's trying to pull you into that, and now all of a sudden you're singing these Christian words. Can you just touch on the whole scene of when you were trying to sing these Christian rock songs, but you were still addicted to drugs and even singing while you were high, and then when you came here, what God showed you about true worship of Him?
Yeah, there was a point where the church started writing songs. My pastor, Jane, God was giving her songs, giving her words, and we started doing these songs. And as we were doing them, we would sing them, and I could feel something. It was so different. I could feel a change in my heart. And I knew what it was like, in the world. It was kind of like, it just kind of was appeased your flesh or something in your mind. I could feel this stuff going in my heart, and it got to the point was like, I really felt this is it. This is the music that I've been looking for. It's God's music, and it was coming from people. It was coming from somebody who had no training, was not a musician, nothing, but God was given those songs, and I could feel a change in my heart. It was so different.
I know you mentioned earlier when Ray was promoting you, it was taking the world's music and trying to put on lyrics about Jesus. And all the while, your life, you're not even really a Christian. And then you come to the Word of Faith Fellowship and you're hearing these songs about Jesus coming from people who didn't have all the training. But you and I were talking earlier, and you were sharing how you felt the presence of God. And I love to think about that, because when you really come to God His way, he God's a holy God, and He doesn't take, He doesn't have you come to Him through the world and the world system and the world's way. He's a holy God, and He wants you to come to Him in spirit and truth, as Jesus said. And when you do it His way, you feel His presence. And I love that, how you touched on that, and it's the truth. So we got a few minutes left, Joe, and if you would go ahead and sing.
Okay.
Jesus, 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 there's just something about that name. Master, Savior, Jesus, like the fragrance after the rain. Jesus, 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 let all heaven and earth proclaim. Kings and kingdoms, they'll all pass away, but there's something about that name. Oh, Jesus, 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 there's just something about that name. He's my master, my Savior, Jesus. He's like the fragrance after the rain. Jesus, 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 let all heaven and earth proclaim. Kings and kingdoms, they'll all pass away, but there's something about that name. There's just something about that name.
So much. Joe English has what a miracle we have just heard as he shared his life, how he had it all. He had the fame, he had the fortune, he had the money, but he didn't have Jesus Christ, and he was an empty, lonely man, a drug addict, searching until he truly met Jesus Christ. So what a wonderful testimony we have had today, and we are so glad that you have listened to us. Again, this is Word of Faith Fellowship, sharing with you what God has done in our lives, and we are here Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 8:30 to 9. Thank you very much.